Hello everyone and welcome to Kick It. Before we get into the real meat of this episode, we need to discuss the major issue concerning Patreon and the backlash to its recent changes. For anyone not familiar with the situation, before this month, Patreon would work by taking the money you had made that month, taking 5% as their cut, as well as anywhere between 2 to 10% in transaction fees, leaving you with around 85 to 93% of your final earnings. Now, the new proposed payment structure would keep Patreon's 5%, but remove the transaction fees, and instead puts the fees on your backers. So each Patreon's pledge could see an additional 2.9% plus 35-cent charge to their pledge. The real issue people are having with this, besides the obvious fact Patreon didn't consult with anyone about this, is how this will potentially damage $1 pledges, which for a lot of people are the real backbone of their campaigns. With this new pricing structure, $1 backers will essentially be paying $1.38 instead every single month. And if you're backing several creators and projects, that can really tally up. Now, more prominent Patreon members than me have taken a bigger stand, with questionable contents creator Jeff Jacks having a personal meeting with Patreon co-founder Jack Cont, in which he admitted they know they've fucked up. Which I have to say is some blunt honesty for a company these days. But it seems these changes are necessary to keep the lights on. At the same time this is going on, Kickstarter have announced their new Patreon alternative called Drip, which will be rolling out at the beginning of next year. Of course, while this allows you access to Kickstarter's huge user base, this does pose a serious predicament to members of Patreon, especially smaller creators like myself. Do you leave Patreon, move to Drip, and hope to God your supporters follow? Or that Drip doesn't do the same fee jerking as Patreon would? Or do you double dip, which can lead to other serious issues? However, mere hours before we filmed today, Patreon have since reversed their planned feed changes and apologized profusely to people losing supporters. It still seems that a change is needed, but this time they'll be discussing with creators and relying more on user feedback. Who knows what the outcome will be, but we'll definitely keep you posted in the coming months. Before we get to the main event, WayForward have released the second piece of DLC for Shantae Half Genie Hero. Entitled Friends Till the End, this mode has you play as Shantae's long-standing supporting cast of Bolo, Sky, and Rotty Tops. This expansion is set at the same time as Risky Boot's story, with our three friends entering Shantae's mind, reliving the levels she played in the original game as memories, or as I like to call it, what's their excuse this time for recycling the same levels? This time, however, you're able to switch between the three friends who all have their own abilities to help throughout levels. Bolo has a grappling hook, Sky can hover and create bird platforms, and Rossi can throw her head through dark gates and gain health by eating brains. Because of this, each level feels substantially slower than playing as just Shantae or Risky. There is another level to this as well. Collecting gems will raise each character's melee attack, while getting hit will make you lose gems. Also, while all three characters share the same heart meter, for some reason they have separate magic meters. That and Sky's platforms are so easy to just miss the right heights, and Bolo's chain can be crazy to control. Honestly, out of the three modes of Half Genie Hero available, this is probably the weakest of the bunch so far, with the swapping of characters just feeling tedious. That being said, it's available right now on all major platforms for just $8. Back in 2015, a group of former Rareware developers, including Steve Mayles, Gavin Price, and Chris Sutherland, formed a new studio called Playtonic, with the goal to create a brand new game inspired by their previous work, like Donkey Kong 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and most importantly, Banjo-Kazooie. Yooka Laylee launched on Kickstarter on May 1st and raked in over $1 million within the first 24 hours. A first for the site at the time, with yours truly slapping down over 700 Aussie dollars on the project. After 45 days, they raised almost $3 million, as well as the announcement they had signed a deal with publisher Team 17, who would help with porting the game to PlayStation and Xbox, while Playtonic handled the PC and Wii U version. That last system is important, as for most people, that was their console of choice for this game. Having an old-school 3D platformer headed by the boys from Rareware coming to a Nintendo platform once again was like a dream come true. Like the last 15 years didn't happen. After funding, development went along smoothly. With Unity, it allowed them use of a lightweight yet powerful engine to work with. A year after funding, they will release a technical demo known as the Toy Box, which showed off the basics of the game. However, in December 2016, mere months away from the game's release in April, it was announced that the Wii U version was being cancelled. Despite some people thinking this was due to the system being discontinued for the upcoming Switch, it was actually due to unforeseen technical difficulties, most likely due to Unity's implementation on the system. While they confirmed they were now working on bringing the game to Switch, there were no mention on when it would be released. Sadly, when the game released in April 2017, the Switch version was nowhere to be found. And the game, well, let's just say, reception wasn't all that great.
Shame, innit?
With serious issues concerning the camera and the N64 style gibberish voice tracks on the side of annoying rather than endearing. Things weren't helped when a few months prior, video game reviewer and Rareware fan Jontron Jafari had his guest recording removed from the game due to recent controversial comments. As for me, in an episode around the time of its release, I made it clear that I supported this game because of their legacy with Nintendo and was sticking with the Switch version, and therefore refused to review it until it came out on that system. Months rolled by, and sadly, Playtonic really didn't feel the need to update us on the Switch version situation that much. The only thing we did know is that it was supposed to be released in 2017. We didn't actually get a proper announcement until 2 weeks before its release. Now, for me, when this game was originally released, I pretty much avoided anything about this game. Let's plays, reviews, everything. So I could come into this game as fresh as possible. So, with that said, let's delve into Yooka Laylee on Switch. So, usually I'd begin with the story, but really, what story? There's no kidnapped sister, no perished best friend, heck, they aren't even hungover. At least, Yooka isn't. The whole plot revolves around our duo finding an ancient book and decide whether to hawk it or not, while the big baddie, corporate middleman capital B, proceeds to steal all the books in existence to create a monopoly on literature. God, he is screwed when Kindle comes out. So, the plot of the game is for Yooka and Laylee to retrieve these golden padgies from a book because it's not really explained. So, starting out, controlling the two seems to work fairly well. With a quick switch in the options, the manual camera works just fine, despite a few moments when I will take control for a certain puzzle. As for the voices, yeah, I can see how this will get annoying. Switch to short post-haste. So, Yooka Laylee is structured very similar to BK, with an overarching hub world in Hivory Tower, and giant tomes for each of the game's worlds, starting with Tribal Stack Tropics. And right from the get-go, you realize how vast these worlds are. Unfortunately, navigating them are another thing entirely, with no map or really any kind of objective whatsoever. Continuing with the BK comparisons, taking the place of Mumbo Jumbo is Dr. Puzz and her transformation ray, turning you into a flower, plow truck, or even a school of fish. And to help unlock moves like Bottles did is the shrewd, cunning, totally stole poorly dangerously's brick phone, Trouser the Snake, where you exchange the quills littered throughout the game for moves needed to advance, like Laylee riding on a rolling Yooka, basically their answer to Talon Trot. This time, however, it's weighted by a meter that can be refilled by grabbing butterflies. But they are also used as a health meter as well. You use them for health by having Yooka grab them with his tongue. Speaking of which, I do have to give props for Yooka's tongue. Not in that way. He is able to pick up edible flowers that work as projectiles, like snowballs, fire breath, or even bombs. But he's also able to absorb things like fire in cold weather, or honey to stay on slippery surfaces. With 25 Paggies to collect in each level, you'll be spending a lot of time in every world, especially when you can expand each of them even further. During my playthrough, I spent the most time in the first world, and from what I can tell, so did the developers. There doesn't seem to be any real variety when it comes to enemies, with basically the same creatures everywhere who can all be vanquished by a simple tail spin. And then there are the bouncing eyes that are attached to inanimate objects and attack, or having to do that damn minecart jewel collection in every damn world. Yooka Laylee isn't a spiritual sequel to Banjo-Kazooie. It is Banjo-Kazooie. This game isn't an evolution of the Rareware-style 3D collectathon platformer, it's just retreading the same path we made back in 1998. I mean, say what you will about nuts and bolts, and I do say a lot, believe me. But at least it was trying something new. What Yooka Laylee does is feel like a boring, soulless, empty vessel. Compare it to another Rareware-style title that came out recently, A Hat in Time. While inspired by the same games as Playtonic, Hat in Time was an absolute blast to play. Every character had style and pizzazz. It had actual voice work instead of the gibberish, which was really only done because it's what we did back then. While Hat has acts and objectives to follow, in Yooka, you just plopped into a giant world and basically given no direction whatsoever. Both games have the same amount of worlds and last the same amount of hours, but at least Hat felt like it was worth it and felt more polished. I know a lot of issues have been addressed already, but it's little things like Yooka's tongue grappling hook refusing to work half the time. Most of what I'm saying you've probably already heard time and time again since the game's original release back in April. But for me personally, I wanted to like this game. I really did. Not just because I dropped $700 on collectibles I don't even know what to do with anymore, but after My Number 9's abysmal release last year, Yooka Laylee needed to be a home run. It's come to the point where spiritual successes are just not worth it anymore. Maybe Bloodstained might prove that wrong, but I'm not holding my breath right now. It wasn't helped by an 8-month delay that was caused due to stubbornness on Playtonic's part. I will admit it was admirable of them to do everything they could to keep the Wii U version alive because of the support it had received, but while you're exhausting every avenue possible to keep it viable, you know what Wii U owners were thinking? I'm definitely going to get a Switch when it comes out. Playtonic really should have cut their losses with Wii U the moment it was obvious NX was coming out in early 2017. It doesn't help that it came out only 2 months after one of the biggest titles in history. I mean, with previous reception already slowing its momentum, after Odyssey, this game had no chance. It's a real shame to see such a promising project end up like this. I mean, this is the most people have talked about Yooka Laylee in months. I doubt we'll be seeing them again anytime soon. Playtonic has some amazingly talented developers working there on what really felt like a passion project. Which just begs the question, what are they going to do now? I mean, Yooka Tui is probably out of the question for now, so maybe something original. Something that isn't tied to a nostalgia trip. You know, it would be a shame to let that Shovel Knight mole go to waste over just a simple cameo. Since starting Kick It back in 2014, I've noticed a real pattern when it comes to project successes. It seems that the very successful projects that rake in millions like Broken Age, My Number 9, and Yooka Laylee just fall on their face, while projects that get funded but not to a crazy degree do much better, like Shovel Knight, Shantae, Hat in Time, Darkest Dungeon, and of course one of the greatest games ever made, Undertale. Of course, there are exceptions like Wasteland 2, which incidentally just got announced for Switch. But it seems that once you reach that $1 million threshold is when things start to fall apart. As we head into 2018, I haven't been more unsure about the world of crowdfunding than I am now. With the whole situation with Patreon and so much disappointment with major Kickstarter games, I'm feeling quite nervous for upcoming titles like Shenmue 3, Psychonauts 2, and of course Bloodstained. But whatever happens, you can be damn sure to hear it all on Kick It. Well, I'll see you all next time.